What is a simp? You can look it up in Urban Dictionary, but it basically means a guy who will do anything for a particular girl. Obviously, this thing can be very overused. So you can have a person who's just being a nice person, being a considerate person. People say, people insecure that they're themselves not that nice will say, oh, a guy's being a simp. So how is being a simp bad? I'm going to talk in a very particular set of circumstances. It is possible to be a simp, meaning be a completely nice, giving, caring, you'll do anything for your partner, and actually they have a very good relationship like that. Typically, if you are with someone in that relationship, whether you're pursuing it or you're in the relationship right now, and that person has a very dominant personality, it could be that being a simp would work. Sometimes being very submissive, meaning being very, if that is who you are deep down, you're a submissive person. You want the way that you adapt. What does it really mean to be submissive in personality? Now, I'm not talking about kinky stuff where you like getting tied up and beaten. Okay, I'm talking about actually in a relationship dynamic. If you naturally feel the way you adapt in your relationships is to be submissive, is to look up to your partner, would be a follower, to go along with what they say, and that's what you actually feel deep down. Being a simp is actually perfect because there still has to be a balance, because you're going to probably be attracted to people with more dominant personalities, people who want to be more of a leader, would like someone to follow them, sort of want to be that dominant role in the relationship, and being very nice and very giving, very caring, that can actually be a very attractive quality, again, to the right people. I would say even in that situation, being too much of a simp, where you completely lose yourself and you're not being yourself at all, you're just totally just trying to mold your personality and yourself and the way you act and the way you talk completely to the other person wants. I would say even dominant people would find that, if it's to such an extreme extent, to be unattractive, because you want to be, no matter who you are, if you're in a relationship, you want to be with the person themselves. Their personality is attractive. You want to feel like there's even someone who's submissive has like a certain charm of just who they are. And if a person, again, is way too molding themselves, that charm is going to be missing. So first of all, even a submissive person needs to limit how simpy they're going to be because it can be to the point where it's not going to be attractive. But let's talk about a particular scenario. I'm going to talk about an average male, who usually simp is a term that is applied to guys who would like to not be submissive. They would like to be respected. They would like to take at least somewhat the dominant, sort of be the leader in the relationship, to have the dominant role, or at least to be eye to eye, at least to be equals. If a person is way too simpy, where they'll just do anything for the other person, it's a very, very unattractive quality. So first of all, there's the overall unattractiveness of the person just not being genuine, not being yourself. Someone who's not genuine is just, the person them is missing. So there's that. But there's also another thing, that if you just want to say, again, a typical girl, there's obviously so many exceptions, and we'll talk about the more exceptions as we goes by. But let's say you just have a typical female who wants a guy who's taller than them and stronger than them, and wants that just to be able to sort of lean on them and to be taken care of. There is this little thing, again, obviously, there's a lot of exceptions. A lot of girls do not want a guy like that. But let's just say an average, just sort of average, typical, we'll go with the word typical instead of average, sort of just would want a guy that they can sort of look up to and respect. You want someone who's nice, but you don't want someone who's a simp. What's the difference? Someone who's nice means they're going to be themselves. They're going to be self-confident. They're going to have a little bit of an attitude of, I'm going to be me, and you take it or leave it. That's actually a very attractive attitude, as long as it's not done too much, because you're getting that real person. You're feeling their strength. Self-confidence is very, very sexy. It's very attractive. If a person cares about what other people think so much, and they're trying to mold themselves, they're missing the self-confidence. And there's also another trap, and I feel like this is probably the most dangerous trap. A lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll care so much, they'll value the relationship so much to the point where they would do anything to please the other person, but they'll, in order not to be a simp, they'll pretend that they don't care. They'll sort of portray this false self-confidence. And that is actually probably the prototype of being a simp, is where you actually care so much about every little thing the person thinks about you, but you pretend not to. And every single time they go and say, well, you're being a simp, saying, well, no, I'm not being a simp. I don't really care. I'm just being myself. If you actually care and you're pretending not to, people can see right through that, especially girls who have very good intuitions. They can see right through that crap. You're not going to be able to get away with it. The only way to actually get out of being a simp is to have self-value to the point where you care more about being yourself than you care about the relationship. Because if you care more about the relationship with a particular person more than being yourself, you're going to just do anything for them, and you're going to lose yourself in the process of the relationship, which it will actually backfire, because the whole thing you're trying to do is adjust it. Everything that person wants, you're going to do for them, and you're going to, if you talk a certain way and it'll annoy the person, you're going to adjust that. You're adjusting everything. You're trying to please them so hard that is going to actually end up being the biggest turnoff, because what they're looking for is for you to actually be yourself and to be self-confident. But let's talk about someone going the other way. Let's talk about the douchebag. A douchebag is also unbalanced, but he's exactly the opposite. He values being himself so much where he's not willing to compromise on any little thing for the sake of the relationship. So it can be coming from one of two places. One is that he completely undervalues relationships. Relationships don't matter to him at all. His connection with any particular person, he's like, he doesn't value anyone else. They could be coming from that. Or he overvalues stubbornly his little innuendos and his just being himself. Now, you can have a person who can get away with that and still be charismatic. There are even people, I would say Donald Trump is an example of someone who can be super, super self-confident and still gets away with it because they're a charismatic person. That sort of self-confidence gives the charisma off to other people. But forget about controversial figures. You'll think about just a lot of people, let's say freaking Hollywood celebrities, that they're just like, they have this thing where they're just completely full of themselves. Even like the Rock, Dwayne Johnson. Now, I think in real life he's actually a pretty nice person, but one of his stage personas, is him being the complete and total 100% douchebag, not caring about what anyone thinks besides himself. And that's actually a very charismatic role that he plays. There's something about the guy who just doesn't care at all about what anyone thinks about him, and they're just going to be the most genuine version of themselves, coupled with charisma. That's really important. That actually ends up being a very attractive, sort of like star-like quality. Now, if you have a person who does not have charisma, and charisma here is going to just mean that sort of like the sensitivity to sort of like, it's very like, it's not a very easy thing to define what exactly is charisma, but it's basically coming off as pleasant and as confident and not obnoxious, not cringy, more just like being very admirable, just sort of in your mannerisms and the way you talk. So someone who has the charisma can get away with being a douchebag. Obviously, someone with very little charisma who's just annoying and obnoxious, and they just end up being one of these people, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, and they don't have the charisma to couple with that. No one's going to find that attractive at all. But that's only when it comes to sort of being a star or being a YouTuber or being a celebrity or even being president. But when it comes to actually being in a relationship, even the people that find that sort of personality attractive, and even they would maybe agree to go on a date with that person, in the course of a long-term relationship, no one's going to like the guy who is like that. I mean, if you even imagine all the people who think, let's say Donald Trump is very charismatic, how many of you would like to date him, would actually like to be in a long-term relationship with someone with that level of we can call it douchebaggery. So just so self-confidence to the point where you just don't care about what anyone thinks about you. You're not going to adjust yourself and the way you talk and the way you act at all to cater to other people's things. I don't think it's overconfidence. I really don't think that's what it's about. It's because if you are just being yourself, I don't think it's overconfidence, it's just confidence. It's not being flexible. It's inflexibility. So again, if you're too flexible, you're a simp. It means you'll do anything for the other person. If you won't do anything for the other person, you're a douchebag. There is this fine area between, and some people are more, some people are less, and I feel like it's just a matter of balance where you're still self-confident enough to be yourself, but you're still flexible and you're still willing to make adjustments and make changes to suit the other person, that you're still nice and considerate. Since again, in a long-term relationship, if you're not going to be able to be flexible and not able to somewhat change the way you act and the way you talk to suit the other person, you're just going to end up with so much friction building over time that the relationship is not going to last. A need that a lot of people have, I think it's a very genuine emotional need people have from relationships, is to feel accepted, just to feel appreciated. The other person loves you. It's really to feel love. And part of feeling love is the person accepting you for who you are deep down, for your sort of root base personality. If you are presenting yourself too much in a way where you're trying to be too politically correct and you're trying to be too much of a simp, to be too adjusting yourself in order to meet the other person's needs, you're never going to find someone who will accept you for who you are. They're just accepting this charade and this act that you're putting on, and you're really not going to feel loved deep down. It's another psychological reason why the best way to approach dating is to just be yourself and to let whoever that is, and even if there's only 10% of people or even 1% of people or even 0.1% of people who will love you for who you are, just find that person, because you're not going to actually feel real deep love from anyone else. I think this is really a mistake that a lot of people do when they get into relationships and they don't really last long term, is because they're sort of presenting themselves in a certain way in order to attract a partner. But as time goes by, they say, well, I don't really actually feel appreciated. So they naturally let their guard down and start being more and more themselves and letting the person in more and more to who they really are. And then the person's like, hey, that's not what I signed up for. How many people do you know that when they start dating someone, their partner seems one way, but after a little while, they're like, who the heck is this? They end up seeming like something else. The best way is to actually present yourself genuinely for who you are. And you feel like that's going to appeal to less people? Great. It's way better than attracting someone who's not going to actually love you for who you are and finding out the hard way many months later. Better to just put that filter up from the beginning and just say, this is me. If you like it, great. And if not, not. Now, the reason why people have a hard time with this is because they're lonely. I think this is actually probably one of the biggest things that turns people into simps. Because again, how do you not be a simp? You have to value being yourself more than you value the relationship. Once you value the relationship more than you value yourself, you're a simp, because you would compromise anything about yourself in order to have the relationship. If you're super lonely and you're feeling that pain and that angst, and I definitely, I know what that feels like. We all know what that feels like, to just feel alone. It sucks. And it doesn't go away. It's like you're lonely until you find someone. It will make, what happens then is that I don't think you're necessarily lowering your self-worth, but you're increasing your worth for relationships to the point where it ends up actually being higher than your self-worth. You're just putting it all up in the sky. So again, finding ways in the meantime to be able to cope with one's loneliness if one does not have a partner, to be able to be resilient enough to wait for that person who will really love you for who you are, that would be a positive thing. I'm not really going to get into that right now, exactly how to do that. I feel like that could probably be an entire podcast by itself of how to deal with loneliness. But finding any way to, again, to cope with loneliness will definitely help you wait for the right person. There's also not every relationship that person has needs to be lifelong. This is my life partner. Like, people can have casual relationships. It's probably very good to be forthcoming, and there should be good communication, and you can have something that's more casual where you don't need the person to appreciate you deeply for who you are and have this true love. You can have friends. Some people, just friends, really solve their loneliness, but it could even be more of a romantic nature, that you're just being clear that this is a casual relationship, and when one of us or both of us find someone who we feel like we really are going to fall in love with, so maybe this is not going to work out. I think you can really sort of start casual relationships on that premise, and that will definitely, that's probably the most effective way to sort of stifle one's loneliness, in order to really be able to wait to find that person who you're just going to be completely yourself, and the person's going to love you for who you are. Now, even in a casual relationship, you still need a balance. Like, even though you're maybe going to be a little more flexible and not let the person in that much, because you sort of have the sense that the person's not necessarily going to appreciate you holistically and completely. Again, you still need to be a little bit of yourself in order to be an attractive person, even for a casual relationship. But certainly, if you're going for that really deep, loving relationship, there's absolutely no point in faking anything, and there's no point in putting the relationship value of the relationship over the value of yourself. And being a simp is certainly not the way. Being an inflexible douchebag is certainly not the way. Best way is just this good balance of feeling confident, being yourself, and being considerate to the other person, but not to the point where you value them more than you value yourself.